All right, let's go. All right. I want to talk about John Toews. Now, Tim, you remember him.
Oh, yes. Jonathan Toews won 3 Stanley Cups, right? He was Captain Canada for a while. But I remember in, 2007, it was the World Juniors, and they were in a shootout. Carey Price was the Canadian goalie.
Yeah.
And after they had, you pick 4 players for the shootout or 5 players, and then you could shoot whoever you want.
And he kept going.
So he kept putting in, Hartsburg, I think was the coach, kept putting Toews in. So I think he scored 5 goals in a row. And each one was different. It was between the legs, top corner, backhand. And then finally Carey Price made a save and they won the gold medal.
Yeah. And everybody remembers him. He was the hero of heroes. Remember the picture was in the paper and everything?
Yeah, geez, talk about pressure.
Yeah. I wonder, I never talked to him about that. But you know what he has? I read it. I wrote that down. He has symptoms of a long COVID and chronic immune response. So he's going to take a year off. And
he didn't have a bad year though last year.
He had a great year. He got 15 goals in 53 games. That's 20-some goals.
Yeah, guys are getting 10-year contracts for that.
So he got 15. So they're going to miss him. He's going to take a year off. I don't know about a year off.
Yeah, how old is he?
He's about 30-some. And Kane, his funny thing is, his partner, I shouldn't say, his partner
in crime,
Yeah, but nobody ever says that. But they're both off. And
him and
you don't play 16 years unless you have some injuries along the line.
Yeah, Patrick Kane, he had hip surgery.
Yeah, hip surgery.
So he'll be out. But, it's one of those things, Dad, where people kind of Chicago struggled the last how many years and stuff like that, but they kind of went for it with Kane and Toews, and they thought
give them 11-year contracts,
right? So they went for it. They won 3 Stanley Cups. So why the fans
they
in
didn't
Chicago
give them 11-year contracts?
But the fans in Chicago shouldn't complain. I mean, they won 3 Stanley Cups, but you're not going to.
That's a tough crowd.
Yeah, but I mean, to win the Stanley Cup, you're going to have
Remember the time I told you about the time? I don't know what I was near. I was near the referee, and the referee said, "This crowd is into it. This crowd is going crazy. Yeah, let's get the crowd out of it."
Yeah,
and he gave him a penalty.
Chicago, yeah, because they were going nuts.
6 seconds, he gave him a penalty.
Yeah,
and he got the crowd out of it and give it to Chicago. Let's get this crowd out of it. This crowd is enjoying this game too much. Yeah, and I never forgot that. But the crowd, they pay the money. Doesn't make any difference. Got to get this crowd out of it.
So what I remember about Chicago is, Dad, you really liked their old arena,
well,
right?
Well, everybody did. And the seats are uncomfortable, and you had to go down to the dressing rooms. And
but that organ was really something. Didn't they say the pipes of the organ were built?
They couldn't take the organ out of it.
The pipes were
right in the cement.
It was in cement. They just couldn't take it out. But boy, I remember the very first time in Chicago, they were going to play the siren, I guess, on
it was the horn on the owner's yacht.
Yeah,
his old yacht. They took it out and they put it in. Same thing, put it into the cement.
The players knew. The Chicago players knew about it, and we didn't know about it. And when they played that thing, they got the first goal. Holy Dinah! I could see the crowd. I could see our guys almost go right under the floor. It was really loud.
So we never really got into it, Dad. Now they got Bedard. They're all excited. How many goals is he going to get?
Oh, boy. I'd say 15. It's going to be a lot tougher in the National Hockey League. And before the game, the guys will say, he won't mention his name. I hope they don't mention his name. And we take care of that there. Make sure he doesn't get a lot of goals against us. Bedard gets 3 goals against so-and-so. We don't want that stuff. So anyhow, but I think the teams are getting older. I think the teams that want to win it, Tim, Take for instance Washington. They give Wilson a 7-year contract. A 7-year contract.
Yeah.
Boy, you give a fighter a 7-year contract. He'll do good next year. He'll do good, and he'll just.
He's more than a fighter though.
He deserves it.
He truly is an enforcer where he scores and can fight.
Yeah, there's not too many guys like him around. Here's Washington. They're going for it next year. Washington again, 7-year contract. Matt Pacioretty, they signed him. He's 35. Joel Edmondson, he's 30. Nick Backstrom is 36. TJ Oshie is 30. I didn't think Oshie was that old. 37. John Carlson is 34. And Ovi, I think, is 37. And he plays a tough game. And you know who else is going for it? And Dubas he's going for it. Malkin is 37. Letang is 36. Crosby's 36. Carlson is 33. So the teams that are going for it, Cindy, are the teams that are older now.
But I'm going to ask you, Dad. So you look at Pittsburgh. He gets Carlson. I mean, that's going to be a hell of a power play. You got Letang, Carlson, Crosby.
They got a pretty good
Malkin,
power play.
And whoever else you want to throw on there. But you saw the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
It was a tong war.
Well,
and Pittsburgh's not going to be able to. And it's the same thing with Dubas. They don't have the toughness.
No, well,
look at Florida slapping Marner around and throwing the rookie down and giving him concussion and nothing.
Choking him with a stick. Yeah, but anyhow, the teams that want to win it have older teams and more experience, and that's the way it should be.
So, Cindy and Dad, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Spreads.ca. They're a Canadian-owned online casino and sportsbook. And if you
That's
sign
a big thing, Tim.
Yep. And if you sign up now and use the promo GRAPES, they'll match your deposit up to $250. You get 10 spins on their big whale, and if you get 3 of your suits, you make some big money. And your first sports bet, they'll spot you $25. And they had a big night last night, Dad, because there was a big UFC fight. Oh. And you just can't watch that, can you?
You know, it's a funny thing. You're going to help me on this. The guy that used to be the bodyguard. Remember the guy that his wife?
Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah. He couldn't watch it either. And he was in for murder. Not that I was in for murder, but I can't watch that. It's like a street fight. It really is. I can't. And last night I tuned in to see a couple of guys. Holy dying. One guy's from Winnipeg.
Yeah, the guy that won, I forget his name. He's a shorter guy from Winnipeg.
Katon.
Kato or something like that.
Kato. And he won it last night.
Boy, that was a brutal fight.
Oh, boy. I don't know why I tune in to see these fights, and I see the most brutal fights of all.
So you can watch boxing, but you can't watch UFC.
I can't watch that. That's like a street fight. And he said to his wife, and she bought the tickets and everything, I bought you tickets for the championship fight. He says, well, you watch it. He says, I'm going out in the parking lot and have a cigarette.
Yeah, well, I think those guys, they got an extra $50,000 for fight of the night.
Well, but, I used to fight for $4,500.
Yeah, you know what I like when Tia said? It goes, viewer discretion, some scenes of violence.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, really. Yeah, but it was funny. Because I was watching the fight, and it was a particularly brutal fight, and it wasn't a lot of blood, but their faces were all. And I thought, boy, Dad couldn't watch this.
I can't. I happened just to tune in as I'm going by, and there it is. And I said, I watched it and boy, was he happy after the fight, eh, Dana White?
Yeah, well, they were tough. Well, it was a particularly tough fight because it was one of it really was kind of barbaric in a way where if you won, you got a contract with the UFC. If you lost, you were benched to the minors.
And they give them $50,000 each.
Well, I think they won fight of the night.
Oh boy, was it a fight of the night?
Yeah, it's too expensive though now.
Yeah,
$70 to watch the fight.
Yeah, right? It used to be 10.
Well, it's like Dad. You wanted to watch Conor McGregor the one time. So Conor McGregor fight, it's like close to $100 Canadian to watch pay-per-view. So Dad comes over. So, you want to watch the pay-per-view. You spend $100. Dad goes, put the Leaf game on. I want to watch this. Put the Leaf game on. I don't want to watch this. So we watched Conor McGregor. He hurt his leg, and it was like a minute. So I watched 2 minutes of the UFC for $100.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he was worth it.
Or you paid $100 to watch the
Does he ever dress good, eh?
Oh, yeah.
He looks sharp.
Yeah. Well, he's got a big fight coming up, I think, in about 6 months or something like that. There are lots of big fights in the UFC coming up, and if you want to bet on them, Spreads is a good place to go. So, Dad, some sad news, some bad news in the hockey world. First of all, Buffalo's voice, Rick Jeanneret.
Rick Jeanneret. Mayday, Mayday, remember that one, Cindy?
Yeah.
Mayday, 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 when he scored the goal. Yeah. That was Brad May's biggest.
Big goal. So, but, like Cindy and I and you, Dad, were talking, like, today, he probably wouldn't be able to get a job.
No, Danny Gallivan probably wouldn't. Bob Cole.
They're too distinctive. Is that it?
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
I think they are. It sounds now like the TV broadcasters want, as you say, Cindy, they're just vanilla right across. You can't tell who's who. Like,
they're supposed to be unbiased because most of those guys weren't they sort of biased? You could tell.
Boston guys aren't.
You could hear.
The Boston guys aren't biased.
Oh, please give me a break, Dad.
No, but if you're in the other room and you heard Rick Jeanneret, you knew Buffalo Sabres were on.
Yeah.
If you're in the other room and you heard Danny Gallivan, you knew Montreal was on. If you heard Bob Cole, you knew the Hockey Night in Canada Leafs on. You turn on a game, I don't know who's playing. I can't tell. But the days of the distinctive voices, I think, are gone. You got to have that college Ryerson tone.
Well, I don't know about that. I agree with you to a point, but I know Danny Gallivan was good, and I know Bob Cole was good. I know those guys were good, and Rick Jeanneret was right in that school.
Right in school. So for people who don't know, we talk about Mayday, Mayday. So we'll play his clip. I think this is one of his most famous clips.
Yeah, this is. I think.
So Brad May scores the series-winning goal against the Boston Bruins. And Brad May, he's kind of a tough guy. He was and what a goal!
Oh, what a goal!
It was in out. You know what it kind of reminded me of? Remember when Darren McCarty scored the against them? It was kind of like that. So here's Rick Jeanneret on his most famous call with the Brad May goal.
Up, gets it to May and over the line. Here's May going in on goal. He shoots. He scores!
Well, what'd you think of that one, Cindy?
Well, as you said, you know what? They're homers. I like when the announcers are homers, and it adds excitement to the game.
That's the way it should be.
So, Dad, some more bad news in the hockey world is the passing of Bobby Baun.
Yeah, Bobby Baun. I remember the very first time I knew anything about Bobby Baun was the fight was going on, and I was playing for Hershey, and I was just standing there watching the fighter get involved a little bit. And he come by the side of me, and he put a lock hold on me, and I said...
So he was like choking you.
Choking me.
He playing for Rochester.
Yeah. And I was playing for Hershey. He was playing for Rochester. He put a hold on me, and I said, this is how you die. I thought, this is how you die. He was choking the life out of me. And I thought, this is how you die. And...
how'd you get out of it?
I don't know how I got. I think I just went limp. I think I was dying. And I would have been
well,
nice.
You said you fell to the ice and everybody piled on.
Everybody jumped on, and God, I said, this is how you die. And all the guys yelling and screaming and yelling. And when he let go, boy, but nobody ever caught me again from behind in a fight, I'll tell you that. I was ready after that, but he taught me a valuable lesson. Never stand around, and when there's a fight on, you never know who's coming.
So, Dad, Bobby Baun, he was kind of known for maybe one of the hardest hitters of his time.
Oh, he could really. I mean, he'd stand there, and he used to get hurt a lot too, hitting the guys. Him and Al McNeil had a little thing going. He'd stand up a little bit, just a little, and let on he lost the puck or something anyhow, and the guy had cut across and at the blue line, and there'd be Bobby Baun waiting for him there. Boy, he used to hit guys. He could really hit guys.
It's funny though to see.
It was like the time.
It's like Stevens. That's when he hit Lindros.
Yeah, and hit Lindros.
But it's funny to see like like photos of Bobby Baun, like after, in the dressing room and stuff, like how little shoulder pads they were. So if he hit a guy hard, he took as much damage as the guy, right?
Yeah, and when you do look at the shoulder pads, their shoulder pads were down in front of the shoulders. I don't understand it. I had the same thing, and I never got hurt. I don't know. The shoulder pads must have come up or something.
Well, you look at nowadays.
Oh, you see Ovechkin putting them on before. No matter what, guys get hurt. It looked like a football guy.
Do you think that's why there's more injuries nowadays? Is because of the equipment?
I think so. And
you look at their elbow pads.
The elbow pads
are monstrous.
Yeah, they're pretty big now. But anyhow,
He had won 4 Stanley Cups with the Leafs. But the one thing, Dad, that you and I and Cindy and I've talked about a little thing was it wasn't a very good thing that the Leafs did when they raised Salming's number to the roof. And he had the same, 21, had the same number as Baun. Baun wins 4 Stanley Cups. And, Salming never made it out of the semifinals.
And Hockey Night in Canada did a great big thing on Salming. At 21 and raising the thing, and never even mentioned Bobby Baun.
Nice.
Never even mentioned
4 Stanley Cups.
4 Stanley Cups. And I knew he was there because I saw, and I'd like to take the credit for thinking about this, but I heard somebody said, I think it was a cameraman or somebody said, well, Baun was 21 too. And I picked up on it, and I did a really, really great thing on Coach's Corner on Bobby Baun being 21, 2, and all that stuff.
Yeah, you got criticized saying you were anti-Salming because you mentioned Bobby Baun.
Yeah.
They should. Toronto should raise his
Didn't
number.
you get a phone
most famous goal.
Didn't you get a phone call after that broadcast?
No, I got a nice letter from his wife.
Yeah.
And thanking me
Acknowledging
at least he even existed. I read it in the paper where he lent the money to Tim Horton to get started.
Yeah. Because they used to. It's funny, They all worked together in construction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they had to work.
They had to work. He drove things. So, but Dad, one of the more famous goals in hockey was Bobby Baun scored.
Bobby Baun shot the puck with a broken leg, with a broken ankle, and they fill it full of. I don't know what they fill it full of.
Well, they froze it up, but Bobby was on the Grapevine show, so here's a clip of him talking about maybe one of the most famous Leaf goals.
Well, it was the most famous goal.
First of all, I know you don't like talking about it. He gets tired of talking about it, but I think it was one of the greatest things I've heard of in sports. Tell us what happened with that game against Detroit, and I insist on it, okay? Tell us.
I went into the dressing room, I guess, about 10 minutes ago. I'd gone into a face-off with Gordie Howe. I just blocked a shot from Gordie Howe previous to that. In those days, we took the face-off. I took the face-off with Gordie. I spun around on my right leg because in those days, we took the man out, let the puck go. I managed to pull the draw back, and I turned to go with Gord. Well, I just heard a bang, and I fell to the ice, and that was it. I went to the dressing room. I asked the doctor if anything could be done. He says, I can tape it.
It's broken, by the way.
I didn't know at that particular point. I said, could I hurt it anymore? And he said, well, I don't think so. So I said, what can you do?
I like that doctor right off the bat. My type of doctor.
He froze it for me, taped it, went out, and Junior Langlois, who committed the cardinal sin in the left-hand corner, threw the puck blindly around the boards. I hit a magnificent slap shot, Don. It was just magnificent. It was a triple flutter blast, I call it.
It was on the net.
I could read Art Ross.
Yeah.
It was going on the long side of Terry Sawchuk at that time. And it hit Bill Gadsby's stick. And Bill, who I called Jinxie that whole series, Billy had never won nothing.
Yeah.
With New York Rangers for 20 years, hadn't won anything, just came to Detroit. Hit his stick, went the opposite way on Terry into the net, and that tied the series 3-3.
And don't forget, Tim Horton saved his life.
Yeah, he told a crazy story on.
I didn't even know that story.
So and here's Bobby Baun talking about Tim Horton saving his life.
But you loved Timmy Horton. He was your buddy, wasn't he?
He really was. When he had that dreadful accident early on in his career with Gadsby had hit him that particular night, and but I was his gopher back then. I used to work at the sand and gravel pit and had his leg in a
Well,
cast.
Bill hit him, broke his jaw and his leg in the same hit.
At the same time, yeah. And but I knew all their children changed the diapers and all that stuff. So I was very close to Tim for all our career.
You told me a story one time, we were having a pint one time, that he saved your life one time.
Well, that, coming out of the old Madison Square Gardens on 48th Street, well, Madison was on 49th, and the St. Clair Hospital was just in between there. And this particular night, I fell on Camille's Henry's skate, and it went up underneath my throat here, and this was in the middle of the second period. And I finished out the second period. I had it stitched up and then finished out the second period, and it was bothering me a little bit. So by the time I got changed and went out in the bus and waited for the guys to come out of the bus, and after the game was over, Tim usually ran down and had a beer at the local pub and then head out to the plane. Well, by this time, this cut had hemorrhaged and had pushed my tongue back down my throat, and I'd gone out and passed out on the 48th Street in New York City, and Tim had just luckily had come back, and so he carried me into the St. Clair Hospital right there, and they had to do a tracheotomy at that particular time to relieve the pressure and get me breathing again.
So he saved your life.
He really did.
Well, he's saving your
A couple of things that people might not remember about Bobby Baun was he was the first guy to kind of question when he was playing about the salaries, because he told a story on the Grapevine show that he sat down with Gordie Howe and said
They're using you.
They're using you because you're not making enough, and they're using, as you said, Cindy, Gordie Howe as leverage.
Right.
If we're,
If I'm playing Gordie Howe, how can I pay you that? And
right, that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then when he retired, he played 17 years, and everybody was saying how great the NHL pension was. They said it was the best in sports, and he was making $7,000. And he started to question it, and then I think he got shut down. And then his buddy Carl Brewer,
when he got involved and his wife got involved, boy, that's when things changed in the NHL.
So what did Carl Brewer do about all this
Well,
pension?
I'll tell you, I wrote it down here. Brewer launched a lawsuit against the league that eventually led to the Supreme Court ruling for the reimbursement of the managers, $40 million.
Wow.
$40 million.
Where was the Players Association
I
in all
don't think
this?
I got any of that.
no, you did. It was some of the coaches and stuff. You got a bit of that anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was the coaches' stuff. Yeah, they were.
Anyhow, it was Al Eagleson was they were diverting their money from the Players Association, money they were supposed to get into their own pockets.
Yeah.
And Bobby Baum's gone now, and if there's a hockey game up in heaven, you better keep your head up because he's looking for you.